Welcome to A2 Shield. I'm Brett Paddock with the Arbor Police Department. On the heels of Officer Tom Coy's retirement, you'll see a couple new faces hosting the show. If you were so lucky to tune in last month, you met Officer Doug Martell. Myself, Officer Martell, and Officer Ford will be rotating hosts for the show. A little bit about me. This is my 22nd year with the Arbor Police Department, most of which was on road patrol. While on the road, and I still am, a motorcycle officer, another passion of mine was, or is, being a Greek liaison from the police department to Greek life here on campus at Michigan. With that, the theme of this show will be Greek Life 101.
Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the 235-member Michigan Marching Band. Band, take the field.
And welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that clip if you're a Michigan fan on the heels of last night's big basketball victory. We certainly enjoyed being Michigan fans ourselves. If you haven't guessed, today's topic will be Greek life here on campus, and joining me today is Associate Director Chris DeEulis from the Office of Greek Life. Chris, great to have you here on set.
Thanks.
If you could just briefly tell us about yourself and your position.
Yeah, I serve as the Assistant Director in the Office of Greek Life and Interfraternity Council Advisor, and so my primary responsibility is working with our Interfraternity Council, our IFC groups, and then I also work across all 4 of our councils in sexual misconduct prevention, in hazing prevention work. I do some of that in a correlation with our Associate Director, Shannon Cohen, and then I also do work with bystander intervention and alcohol and other drug education. Came before this from Purdue University, so another Big Ten friend there. Before that, I did my grad work at Ball State and did my undergrad work at Central Michigan. So the entire time that I've been working professionally, I've been working with fraternities and sororities.
Great. And how long have you been on campus here?
Since June, so
welcome.
almost done with year 1.
Oh, good deal.
Yeah.
So with the role of Greek life on campus, the authority question always comes up with me in my role of being a liaison officer with from the police department with Greek life. For some of the folks out there, can you explain maybe where that authority comes from, or what exactly is your reach as far as on campus, off campus, and in that aspect?
Yeah, so we operate, the fraternity and sorority community operates in a supported self-governance model, and so we have staff that advise the 4 councils that make up the community currently, and so that would be our Interfraternity Council, or IFC, our Multicultural Greek Council, or MGC, our National Panhellenic Council, or NPHC, and then our Panhellenic Association, which some folks abbreviate either PHA or PanHell. Those groups are then the really driving force of decision-making processes, and the students have different accountability boards and things I think we can get to in a little bit. But in terms of authority, really that is the students who help to be able to make sure that they're staying consistent with the values of their organizations, and we support them in that structure. And so we have staff that advise each of the councils, and then we're led by our Assistant Dean and Interim Director of Greek Life, Nicole Banks.
Great. Thanks. So you alluded to all the 4 councils. I guess if we can talk to each one of them and what the makeup is, I guess, there's a governmental makeup for each one of the councils, as well as Greek Life. So if you could just speak to each council itself and kind of how it's made up with the elected officers.
Yep. So each of our councils has an elected board of students who are their executive boards. That's typically about 10 students that then work to be able to achieve the missions of the council. So that's putting on different large-scale events in terms of education, that's coordinating philanthropic efforts. They really focus on the core values of the community, scholarship, service, brotherhood and sisterhood. Those things are what drives the mission of the councils. Our Interfraternity Council is made up of a little over 25 groups and represents about 2,500 students. Our Panhellenic Association is our largest council. They are about 3,500 students in 17 organizations. The Interfraternity Council are all fraternities. The Panhellenic Association is all sororities. Our NPHC, the National Panhellenic Council, is made up of both fraternities and sororities, and there's 8 organizations in that group. They're about 75 to 100 students in that, and then our Multicultural Greek Council is another 10 or 11 chapters, and that's about 150 students in there.
Okay, so all in all, there's a lot of students. So
yeah, about 6,000. We're about 20% of the student population.
So that's like a small city, and you guys are kind of like the mayors of a small city. So with that, I guess with the councils themselves, they're all regulated by Greek life. Can you speak to some of the social aspects for each council themselves, as far as whether it be in the fall, the spring, or say during the summer?
Yeah.
What is their activities?
I think activities, social is a big benefit of fraternity and sorority, and that gets highlighted, I think, the most of what fraternity and sorority is, but isn't really one of the key purposes. The core values of the fraternity and sorority community are in academic excellence, service to the community, brotherhood and sisterhood, and then leadership and personal development. And so those things are what most of our groups focus on year-round. Service is service is the thing that drives a lot of our events for our organizations, and so engaging with the community in positive ways happens year-round. Social, I think, is the thing that is typically most visible, and I think is highlighted most in terms of movies and media and those pieces, but isn't really the purpose of the organizations. A lot of our groups that are housed, I think, have some really visible presence in the community when they host large-scale social events, but not all of our groups are housed. I think that's an important piece to be able to highlight, is that we have some of our groups are housed in large fraternity, sorority facilities, and we have some groups that are just 5 members living together in a house that may just be a multifamily living home in the community. Some groups have more members that are living in the residence halls, and so it kind of varies organization by organization. Social then also varies organization by organization. We have some groups who have alcohol-free and substance-free housing. We have some groups that allow alcohol in their houses. We have some groups, like I said, that don't have official housing, and so they may focus more on social as bringing people together on campus or in the community to be able to socialize and build bonds that way. It shows up in really different ways depending on the organization.
Great. Kind of leads into my next question here is, what does a student get out of Greek life?
Yeah.
Whether it be, obviously we just talked about the social aspect, what about the academic aspect or reaching out into the Ann Arbor community?
Yeah, I think that's the academics is probably one of the biggest benefits for fraternity and sorority members. On average, fraternity and sorority members achieve higher than the all men and all women's GPAs on campus. I think part of that is due to the mentor relationships that they develop with their older members. Even when students just first join, they typically get a mentor that they're either assigned or they are able to select, who helps them to be able to achieve academically, to be able to get really settled into their classwork and make sure that they understand how to achieve and balance that time management of being a member of a fraternity or sorority, which may be a large time commitment, and then also being able to do the things they're supposed to be doing as a college student, because they come to the University of Michigan to be able to get their education, and so being able to achieve that is one of the kind of core components there. We have great graduation and retention rates at the university, and I think that that's also shown in the fraternity and sorority community.
So that speaks to long-term effects too.
Yep.
So what does that do long-term after their stay here at the University of Michigan?
So membership in a fraternity or sorority is for life, and so once people make that decision, those give them bonds with people both locally and nationally that they can then connect with for the rest of their lives. Many of our students come back as alumni to be able to continue to support their organizations and support the university. A lot of folks talk about like their best man in their wedding or their bridesmaids in their weddings being their fraternity or sorority members. That's a common thing that we hear about, to be able to have people talk with colleagues when they get into their jobs, to be able to find places to be able to socialize or be able to really find community when they move to a new city. They'll reach out to brothers or sisters, even if they're not from their local chapter, to be able to make that connection with folks and really continue that on, because the shared ritual for our fraternities and sororities, each organization has their own, and so that helps them to be able to have those core values that they can then connect with other members on. And so as they move beyond the undergraduate time, they're still able to connect with other folks and have that lifelong experience.
Getting back to on-campus activities here, what is a time commitment for the typical Greek life member, and I guess in a week time span?
Yeah. So the way that I try to explain it to people is normally like adding another 3-credit class, because there's typically weekly meetings, whether that's a chapter meeting or as they're going through a new member or intake process, there's normally a weekly meeting of education around that. There's normally some large-scale projects that the chapter does each semester in terms of either service or philanthropic work, depending on the organization. And then there's other either educational programs or social events that the students have the options of being able to attend. But because of that weekly commitment, that's what I try to help people that have questions about it to think of it as, is taking on another 3-credit class to be able to then manage that type of workload, because there is work that is associated with the personal and professional development, the leadership development programming, the education around risk management and harm reduction, all of those workshops and things that are provided through fraternity and sorority membership, all are time that students have to be able to balance with their other commitments.
So it sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
With your academics here on campus.
Yeah.
So if someone's having, maybe they want to join, what is the joining process? Is there a term for that, or how do you join?
Yeah, so the joining process varies based on the different councils, and then within the councils, there's some variation for some of the organizations. So typically it's referred to as either recruitment or intake. Rush is another word that a lot of folks throw around for it. There's some historical context to like rushing to the trains to be able to get people to move into your house and things like that. We really try to focus on recruitment, and the intake processes for our groups that don't do recruitment are a more formalized process that's coordinated through their national organizations. But typically the way that it works is, depending on what organization you're interested in joining, is researching what that group's process is, whether that is a NPHC organization that is conducting intake and being able to do the research to understand the values and history of the organization and that personal connection that you would have with the group to be able to then go through an application process to be potentially accepted into an intake program to then be an initiated member, or with a Panhellenic organization where there's a formal recruitment process, typically in the fall semester, and then they have their new member process and then initiation at the end of that, or an IFC group where they have a more loosely regulated recruitment process. It's a little less structured, and so people can go to individual organizations or just one, and then be able to follow up and go through their new member process and then into their organization.
Okay. With that, I think in light of the whole hazing terminology, is this the area where that may be a factor?
Yeah, I think that's a big question that we get a lot, and part of what we try to help people understand is hazing isn't just about the new member process or an intake process or even recruitment. It's about the power dynamics that are at play, and so we've seen hazing not just in fraternities and sororities, but in other student organizations and varsity athletes, club sports, those types of things, marching bands. We do a lot of work across campus with groups that we know have hierarchical structures, because that power dynamic really is where hazing typically comes in. I think a lot of folks associate words like pledging with hazing because of some of the incidents that people see. And so that's where some of our organizations have moved away from that language to be able to try and break some of that connotation. Some of our groups still use it, and so there's a lot of variety, but in terms of hazing, all of our organizations have policies against hazing. The university has a policy against hazing. Specifically in Greek life, we have a policy against hazing, and that's acted out and enforced by the students. And so we have a team of staff who do the investigations, and there's boards that would be sent to either through the Center for Campus Involvement or our office in terms of group conduct to be able to adjudicate and follow up on any hazing that we find sufficient information for.
Okay. We'll talk about that in a little bit, as far as the behavior correction and whatnot. But with the four councils, how do they participate with each other and as far as special events or activities on campus here?
The idea and kind of philosophical look that we take is 4 councils, 1 community, and we try to focus on that through some of our educational programming. Our President's Weekend brings together all 4 councils. Things like Greek Week are intended to be all of the councils together coming into a space where they can do service and have some fun together. That's actually happening right now, and so they're doing a Habitat for Humanity build that they're helping with out in Ypsilanti. They have events all this week and next week. Tonight they have a community skate at Yost, and so they just do a lot of different types of events to try and create space where people can feel comfortable together. A lot of the time the groups are either doing their own individual chapter events, and then people may come to those events, or they will do their own events and then promote them to the whole community. And so that's both within the fraternity and sorority community and folks outside of that. Especially for our NPHC and MGC organizations, they host a lot of educational programming that then's open to not just the local community on campus, but the Ann Arbor community, and reaching as far as Ypsilanti and Inkster, and because they also have graduate chapters that they work with that help them to be able to have a broader reach and have that additional layer of support.
That's great. With the prevalence of alcohol on campus, what is Greek life doing to combat some of that and the educational component of that?
Yeah. So the baseline education that we provide across the university for all students is then kind of added onto and layered based on the individual chapters programming that is provided. Most of the national organizations have required education as a component of their new member or intake processes that the members have to go through, and then we look at it in terms of educational dosing. We collaborate a lot with Wolverine Wellness to be able to provide things like sober monitor training and social liaison training for the individual students. There's components where we may bring guest speakers like yourself to be able to come and talk with the different councils to be able to talk about prevention planning, some of those things. A lot of it focuses on how to be able to help make our events better, but also help individuals to make better decisions.
Okay.
Because policies don't really change people's actions, and we know that we can't legislate that change. It has to be that bystander intervention component. We have to make sure that people understand the different layers of it. And so in terms of the alcohol prevalence on campus, it's also then helping people to understand that they don't have to drink, and creating spaces for that. And so we have chapters that will host dry tailgates and open that up to campus. We have groups that will intentionally plan social events that don't have alcohol in them because we have students that are looking for that experience as well.
Okay. It just seems like, if there's going to be some type of issue, it's going to be with alcohol. So combating that, or on the other side of that, we're going to take a quick look at the first clip about a fundraiser for autism awareness. If we could roll that, please.
Live from downtown Detroit, Local 4 News at 11 starts now.
A group of fraternities at the University of Michigan raised tens of thousands of dollars to help families with autistic children.
Alongside the Autism Alliance of Michigan, those fraternities raised $60,000. It's all to provide GPS tracking devices for children with autism who may wander off. The fraternities raised the money after a boy in Troy was hit by a car and died after he wandered away from his home.
And we started this GPS campaign because I feel it's what we might have saved him that night if he had a GPS on.
This afternoon, fraternity members delivered 2 carloads of the GPS devices to local families.
Under fire, all Greek life social activities on hold at the University of Michigan, and it's created a tense situation on campus. 7 Action News reporter Nia Harden is live in Ann Arbor, and Nia, this is based on some pretty serious allegations.
That's right, Stephen, and this was all done by the IFC, a student-led group. They decided to suspend all of those Greek life activities, and I can tell you right now, the feeling on campus is very tense. The word fraternity on campus is stirring a lot of emotion.
It was obviously deserved. They need to get a handle on what they're doing. They need to take responsibility for their actions.
That's because the Interfraternity Council, a student-led group, suspended all Greek life social activities and new member education programs. They say some members are not living up to its standards. One student didn't want us to give her name or show her face, but says she knows some of the victims.
I love the ideas that fraternities and sororities hold. They're pillars of kindness and helpfulness and respect, but the initiation into the brotherhood, just because that's how it was in the past doesn't mean that's how it needs to be. That's a sign of a lack of leadership.
The Michigan Daily, a student newspaper, reports claims of sexual misconduct and hazing.
Disgusting and disgraceful that we look onto it as something to brush away, something that we don't need to worry about, when in fact, people have died from this.
She and other students hope things will start to change.
I think it's a first step to realizing that this stuff does exist.
It's a very common thing and it's a very unfortunate thing, but I think this is a good step in the right direction as far as letting the frats know and everyone on campus like this is obviously not okay.
The IFC has not said when that suspension will be lifted, but they do say they'll continue to focus on the health and safety of the community and its members. Nia Harden, 7 Action News.
All right, thank you so much, Nia.
So as we see, a lot of negativity in the media, and sometimes that's all we see, but there's a lot of philanthropic things that Greek Life does do. If you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. A couple of things with that. I think that the negativity in the media really highlights some of the bad that happens. It also overshadows some of the good, because IFC's decision to be able to self-govern and do that effectively, to be able to put a stop to some of the social activities and new member processes as they evaluated some of the issues that they saw, was reported as affecting all of Greek Life, when really it was for their member organizations. And so our Panhellenic organizations, our NPHC and our MGC, weren't affected by IFC's decision because they aren't governed by IFC, whereas their actions then had rippling kind of effects, because the media coverage promotes the whole fraternity and sorority community then as culpable for those actions. To your point, though, of some of the good that they do, autism awareness is a cause that Alpha Sigma Phi and Pi Kappa Alpha have raised funds for over the past few years. They continue to do that work. We have groups that do direct service with autism, like Theta Delta Chi. We have groups in NPHC and MGC that really focus on things like voter registration, on prenatal support for families. We have a lot of groups that raise money for cancer research. Specifically, breast cancer research is a focus for several of our organizations. Larger scale kind of systemic issues that groups are trying to address are things like intimate partner violence, domestic violence, sexual violence, and being able to raise awareness in those areas and also push for more education and really try to create change in those things. I think that that's part of the work that people don't necessarily always see in the media, but our members know that they are doing and that they're passionate about, and that's the things that how they demonstrate their values and how they really live that. It's the things that aren't congruent with their values that really cause the most issues and cause the most harm. And some of the time that's the stuff that we have to do work to be able to look at how do we rectify some of that, and what are the steps that we have to take to be able to either remove an organization or correct behavior within an organization if they're going to still be around. And the students take that really serious. That's why our Interfraternity Council took that act of really principled self-governance to be able to make the steps that they did. We see a lot of that across our organizations, and they have different boards set up to be able to do that, to be able to govern themselves with the support of the university.
In light of time and how much we have left in the show, can you just real quick speak to if someone wants to make a complaint?
Yeah.
Can they go online or can they call the office? How does somebody do that?
All of that.
Okay. All right.
So we have a lot of different ways to try and make sure that it's as accessible as possible. People can call the Office of Greek Life. They can call the Dean of Students office, which is where we're housed within the university's structure. You can file a complaint through our website. So those complaints go through an accountability process, and we follow up on each of those. There's an email hotline set up for reporting hazing. It's hazinghotline@umich.edu. So all of those are available. And reporting anything to faculty or staff typically enacts a process of accountability with things like the Clery Act and Title IX that help to govern our actions as faculty and staff members at the university. We have an obligation to be able to follow up on the reports that we receive and make sure that we follow our processes and really take that serious.
Well, great. As we wrap up the show, Chris, if you want to give out your contact information, we'll have it up on screen here for a second. If someone wants to contact you or the office.
If there's questions, our office is in the Michigan Union currently in room 4115. We'll be moving to the Tappan Auxiliary Building as the Union gets renovated. The best way to be able to email right now is greek.info@umich.edu. My personal email address is up on our website. It's cdeeulis@umich.edu. And those are probably the best ways to be able to reach us right now.
Great. Chris, thanks for joining me.
Thanks.
And if you have a question for me, my name is, again, Brett Paddock with the Ann Arbor Police Department, and you can reach me at 734-794-6920, or you can email me at bpaddock@a2gov.org. Again, thanks for joining me, and again, I'm Brett Paddock with the Ann Arbor Police Department. Thanks.